And so I got mad at my sister. I don't know why. I thought I was the one that had to defend my dad's interests in the thing, but I got mad at my sister. I was mad at my dad too. And I just shut her out of my life. I wouldn't go visit her. I wouldn't talk to her. I wouldn't do anything. Didn't want to meet her husband. Didn't want to see her kids. She had 2 and he had 1, and they had a couple between them, and now they got 5 or 6 kids in this home. I'm not interested. I don't want to be there. And I wasn't. Well into sobriety. I'm mad at my little brother. Why? Because he's so confused and hurt and neurotic and psychotic that he has to push a food basket around the streets of Atlanta, Georgia? No. I'm mad at him because he's an embarrassment to me. I mean, that is about as self-seeking as you get. It isn't about him at all. Never was about me. He embarrassed me. It doesn't matter to me that he's dying over there in grief. No, the son of a bitch is an embarrassment to me, so I'm mad at him. I mean, none of this really puts you in the best possible light. You know what I mean? This is not nobility. No. But it's the truth, and the prayer has become, let me see the truth. I'm not taking that inventory so I can go, aha. This is not a problem-solving technique. This isn't about, oh, now I see what I've been doing. Okay, now I'll do this for a while. It's not a management tool. It's an inventory. People often want to know if you should take an inventory every year or some regular time. We do know this. We know from the book that a company that never takes an inventory will often go broke. I've also heard, and I believe this, that a company that's always taken inventory will never turn a profit. If the sole business of a company is to take inventory, then they're missing out on an important part of what they could offer, service or products. And I think it's that way with us. We cannot get so caught up in this process that we forget about unity and service. It is not about being better. And I never did this from virtue. And if there's nothing else you get around here today, I hope it's your understanding that I am not here to try to tell you that I did any of this from virtue. I did it from a deep, deep sense of failure, personal failure, and a deep, deep need to live a different life, and a deep, deep fear that I would never, ever be able to rest my head again after having been given all the gifts I was given, squandering them, having taken them out of my life. What a wake-up call. What a gift that was, to have all of that gone in 100 days. You can hardly deny that things aren't going well when you get that done. So I'm down at this 4th step now, and I'm talking about my brother and my sister and those early resentments, and the teachers in the kindergarten and the Sunday school teachers at the Church of the Air and all of those people. And then I move into my later life. They just said do it in chronological order, and I move into my teenage years, and I see the shift when I begin to have booze in my life. God, that was so wonderful. I could see, it's interesting. It says in the book that we're born with faith and born with belief. And I began to see how that was true. Because I formed looking up words in the dictionary, a belief is an expectancy. And I believed in booze. From almost the very beginning, I had an expectancy that it would give me peace. So I had a belief in alcohol, and it did. And I also had faith. Faith is a confident trust born of experience in the dictionary. Did we have faith in booze and drugs? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Did you ever buy a bottle and you couldn't drink it then, and you lock it up in the glove compartment and you feel better? That's faith. You bet. Faith. Or you get the prescription. You don't even have to fill it. You just put it in your pocket. Hi, how are you? I'm better now. Thank you. Because help is on the way. That is called faith, man. So we're born with the ability to have faith and belief. And you begin to discover that kind of interesting stuff as a result of going through, let me see the truth. And you go, well, look at there. And it isn't like a whole guilt trip. I know that I'm just talking about the history of somebody that isn't even around anymore, but God, will you look at the trouble he caused? Wow, will you look at that old idea? Gee whiz, did he try to make a life based on distrust of women? Did he try to make a life based on the notion, the false notion that he can run his life and others, drunk and sober? It's an interesting thing. It's a fascinating process, a little tedious, especially when you get to that third column where it talks about those 7 areas of my life that are affected, interfered with, or hurt. And then he lets us have another little whack at it, because he says, you know what? Now you get to look at your part in it. Your part in it. Where was I afraid? Where was I self-seeking? Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? And sometimes, in that 4th column of this 4-step inventory, it's interesting to look at my deepest resentments weren't even true. I'm mad at my mother because she never loved me. Is that right? Is that really true, Clint? Your mother never loved you? No, it's not true. It's not true. No. I'm mad at this woman because she tried to take my house. Really? She tried to take your house? Yes. How was title held? Well, we were joint tenant. Oh, you gave her half your house. And so she just wants her half that you already gave her. Well, I guess that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, tell the truth about it, man, you know. I mean, because column 3 and 4 won't even flow if I'm not telling the truth about column 2. What is the truth? The truth is I'm mad at her because she won't do it my way. What is your way? Turn in her half the house to you, right? Yes, that's pretty much what I want. Well, she ain't going to do that, pal. Nobody would ever tell her to do that. You just want her to disappear in a puff of smoke. Yeah, pretty much that's it. She could just disappear. My idea of an ideal date is somebody that just makes love like crazy and at midnight turns into a 6-pack of Coke and a pizza. You know that. I don't want much more than that. And marriages, when they're over, they're over. Hey. Don't put on that tape. No, it always comes back to some. All right. And so. That's a lot of work. It needn't be a huge project, but it must be done. And when we get to step 5, he says, nothing counts but thoroughness and honesty. Now that's an important statement to make, because I'll put a lot of stuff in my inventory that's not honest, and it's not going to be thorough at every stage. I just have to notice that nothing counts but thoroughness and honesty. If I want an inventory to count, I have to have it as thorough and as honest as I can. Is it going to be perfect? Oh, hell no, it's not going to be perfect. Never going to be perfect. Nothing counts but thoroughness and honesty. That's all. No big deal. Just notice it. Okay, I'll notice that. And then he says there's a fear inventory that we have to take. And he talks about fear in a weird way. A weird way. It's almost like I decided that I was going to be afraid. He says it's an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. I believe that. That was not a surprise to me. It set in motion trains of circumstance which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. No question about that. But when it says set into motion trains of circumstance, it's like, boy, those trains are coming by and getting smacked with every car along the way. And it does that, you know. But didn't I set the ball rolling? Then he says we think fear ought to be classed with stealing because it causes about as much trouble. And that's crap. That's crap. I part company with you right there. Bill, you and your ilk. Because stealing is something I decide to volitionally do, and fear is sort of visited on me, and it's not my fault. And he said, you know what? If you just keep reading a little bit, it says this. We asked ourselves why we had the fears. And isn't it because self-reliance failed us? Yeah. Okay, so the minute I decide, are you telling me that fear is volitional? Because when I decide to be self-reliant, when I decide to do it all myself, that's when I get afraid. They said, you got it, you got it. You decide to steal, you decide to be self-reliant. You know you can't run your life, and you have tried in every way you can to run it. And the minute you try to manage an unmanageable life, you're trying to do something you cannot do, and it's going to cause fear. And I began to see that the fear is always going to be there. It's an evil and corrosive thread. And so we finally come to a very interesting part of this thing on page 68, because it said, instead of apologizing for God, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. It's not that there's anything that I can do to demonstrate that God ought to help me. It's that God will demonstrate through me what he can do. I was quite taken with that, because as a little boy I really had the idea that it was up to me to do something to God so I could merit his favor and attention. What's going on back there? There's that guy all right? I thought there was I guess it's all right. And it's not about me doing anything for God. God will demonstrate through me what he can do. Isn't that interesting? Instead, it says this. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have me be. So the task is not that I have to do something. The task is I have to ask God to direct my attention to what he would have me be. Because once I know what he would have me be, I know what to do. So I sit in a chair and I ask God, take away my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And I go into a meditative state. I get into an alpha condition. I just go inside. Remove my fear. And my fear kind of dissolves and goes away. And when it does, I say, direct my attention to what you would have me be. Have me be. And the darndest thing happens. Words like patient, be patient, float up. Be committed. Be faithful. Be involved. Be obedient. Those words come up, and it's marching orders for my day. Do I do that every day? No. But when the fear is on me, you bet. And the words come up, and I got it. I got it. You want me to be punctual. Okay, okay. I know what to do now. Leave early. That's all. It's not a mystery. Sometimes we sit in... how many times have you had a conversation with somebody that says, oh, I don't know what God wants me to do. I'm in love with my wife, and I'm also in love with my secretary, and I'm in love with the neighbor to the north. Now, I'm willing to do God's will. I just don't know which one of those three women he wants me to sleep with tonight. And you go, hello. Could you be any deeply asleep any more than you are? There's nothing for me to do. What does he want me to be? Faithful. Oh, that. Yeah. No mystery. No mystery to it. So what he wants me to be is more important than what he can do, because there's nothing I can do for him. But I must live my life in such a way that he can demonstrate through me what he can do. What he can do. And then the sex inventory is again... here's what it was. If that first inventory, when I was sort of new, got rid of a lot of stuff that had taken place in my life. And a second inventory got rid of it. But now this time I had to go through and look at all the ways in which I tried to get power out of a sexual relationship when that wasn't the point of it. So they said, make a list of the women with whom there was sexual tension. Doesn't matter whether you slept with them, but did you want to, and did you want to so much that it colored how you treated them? Oh, yeah. Oh, I get mad at them after a while, or I get aloof, or I play games, or I do this little whole thing. Okay, great. Those people should be on your list. And I made a list of that, not just those people, but other people too, of course, that I had had relationships with, long or short. And I had to look at how each of those relationships started, how it started, what I wanted out of it, what I was willing to give, what I did when I didn't get what I wanted out of it. How did I treat him then? What kind of a friend am I? And how it ended. And what I began to do when I didn't want any more of whatever was going on. And I described that. And then they said, you have to answer these questions on page 69. Where had I been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Whom had I hurt? Where did I unjustly arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where was I at fault? And what should I have done instead? 9 questions. Those questions are fascinating. They're just fascinating because it's a chronicle of all of the ways in which I took dignity from the wonderful women in my life because I couldn't get their power. And it is a very interesting thing, but what comes out of it is the most amazing piece of all, it seems to me. And so we'll break till 3 o'clock and we'll come back and we're going to talk about that sex inventory. That ought to bring them back, shouldn't it? All right. What are we going to talk about next? Anybody got a subject that we should... Sex, okay. What? I left them with the promise of sex and they forgot. How many times does that happen? Yeah, I know it. You're making me homesick now. Do I owe you any child support either way? So I have a list of women. It wasn't as long as I thought it'd be. I don't know why my memory was so... And the questions that I had to answer as to each of these relationships was, where had I been selfish? And selfish is used in this book in an interesting way. The way that is most meaningful to me. We have self-centered, we have self-obsessed, and we have all of that. But when he talks about selfishness, it is most likely this deep driving notion in me that I have to do it all myself. That I have to do it all myself. Because, and I say that because on page 14, he says, simple but not easy. A price has to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. And then he says, I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. And if I take that word selfishness or self-centeredness and use it in that way, this overriding notion that I don't have any power is doubly painful because I know I have to do it all myself. Do what? Manage a relationship, find the right person, manage them, trick them, manipulate them, intimidate them, do all the things that I need to do to get what I want out of the relationship. This afternoon, later, we're going to be talking about the traditions. And I have wondered for many, many years, what does that 12th tradition say? It says something about this principle of anonymity has immense spiritual significance. Anonymity has immense spiritual significance. I never understood why on earth Wilson would have said such a thing. Because in the book, this idea of anonymity started out from fear. He says in one of the prefaces, we don't want to put our names on this book because we have jobs. We're working people. We're not going to be at liberty to help everybody that lines up at our front door. We don't want to put our names on this. And that was in 1939, and in 1946 he said, we find the principle of anonymity has immense spiritual significance. And I didn't know what that meant until someplace along the travels I had the opportunity to help raise a 4-year-old boy. I was a parent to him, living in a home where he and his mother and I lived for about 5 years or a little bit more. And I raised that boy. I was his father figure. He had a father, of course, who was drunk and died with a needle in his arm and so on, and I didn't want to do that. And one day, when I finally said, okay, I will do that, because I knew I was called to do it, because when I made amends to his dad said, take care of my boy. Oh, I didn't want that in my life. I've raised my kids. They're all up and off the payroll. I did a crappy job at it. I left when they were 4 and 5. And now the universe has given me another chance to be a father to a little boy. It's a generous universe, but I almost missed that. But because the word of obedience by this time had kind of come into my life, I said, okay. Because, when the universe hands you an envelope and you open it up and there's a lady and a little boy, you say, give me another envelope. Lose the kid. I don't want the kid. And the answer is, no, that's your envelope. Are you going to take it or not? Okay. And I'll tell you something. That little boy and I fell in love with each other. God, it was amazing. I look at him one day and he's looking at me and he loves me. He didn't have anything on it. Oh my God, I could just feel it. And in a moment I knew that what was really going on was God was loving me through that little boy. Because he works through people, What an amazing, amazing thing. And then not long after that, I looked at him and I knew I loved him, and I knew in the same moment that God was loving that little boy through me. And this kid and I got so tight, so close. I knelt down with him at night and said prayers with him at bedtime. And I loved it. God, until you've heard a little kid pray, you haven't had a good laugh. They are funny. This kid one night said, thank you, God, that I was born at the top of the food chain. And I just fell out laughing my ass off. I'm going, Daniel, you're a funny kid. But you kind of know what they're thinking about and what they're teaching them in school. One time he and I'm off the track, but we'll get back to sex. Don't you worry, I never forget about it long. They asked me to go up to Northern California to speak at a meeting. And his mother was gone for the weekend speaking at a conference. And so I said, well, I'll come up there, but because their speaker had I said, this weekend I'm traveling with a little 6-year-old. And they said, bring him along. So we get on the plane, we get off the plane in Oakland, and we get into the rental car, and we have a couple hours left to go. And he and I are having fun. I said, Daniel, I love traveling with you. Man, you're a great traveler. I love traveling with you. And he said, thank you, the way they do. I said, well, I mean it. When that guy and that little boy came across from the other part of the airplane, the other side of the aisle, and he wanted you to go in the back to play with him, I was glad you didn't do that. And he said, well, I didn't know him that well. And I said, well, I think what he really wanted to do is go back there and get into some trouble. And Daniel looked at me, he said, we don't know that about him. Shut up, kid. I didn't say that, but I thought, you've been talking to your mother too much. She goes for that kind of love and tolerance crap. But what a lesson, And then I began to see, because there was an anonymity to his love for me. It just was coming through him. and an anonymity to my love for him. It was God loving him through me. And I didn't have my signature all over it. It's like you get a new guy and you know you're not doing anything but lugging him around, but you see power in his life. You see transformation, and you know, somebody come up, you really got Pete sober, you go, you aren't in AA, are you? So there's an anonymity to that. There's an anonymity to that. And so today I know that God loves me through Linda, my wife. He loves me through you, and he loves me through the environment, and he loves me through AA, and he loves me in a lot of ways, but one of those ways is and when I can live my life in a way that God can love her through me, that's a whole different thing, because my love otherwise is going to be conditional, isn't it? I mean, what dress does she have to wear for my ego to calm down? If it's up to me to love her, it's going to be a conditional love. And that's just the tip of that iceberg, as you might guess. But what if I'm just living my life in such a way that God can love Linda through me? There is an anonymity to that. And so that takes me back here to this, what I needed so desperately out of these relationships. Was I selfish? Yeah, I have to do it all myself. And I can't. Was I dishonest? Oh, with every breath. Inconsiderate? Sure. Who had I hurt? Plenty. And I answered all of these questions. Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy? Yes. Suspicion? Yes. Bitterness? Much of the time. Where was I at fault, and what should I have done instead? And they wanted me to pay particular attention in each of these lives to the answer to the question, what should I have done instead? Why? Because they say in the next sentence, in this way we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So if in 15 relationships over the years, I can answer the question, what should I have done instead? What does my idea, that inventory I listened to yesterday, I had 100 people on this list. I said, how the hell did you have that kind of energy? My God almighty. And he remembered all their names. Well, that's another story. But what should I have done instead? We subjected each relationship to the test, was it selfish or not? Whatever our ideal, see, I have an ideal, and so do you, about how these relationships are supposed to go, how I really would want them to go. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm. So they told me, cull out the answers, segregate out the answers to the 9th question, what should I have done instead? And turn that into a paragraph. Write out your ideal for future sex relations. And I did that. And I did not know that Linda would come into my life at the time I did this. But here's what I wrote. I said, I still have it. Be consistently ready to serve her and do so with enthusiasm. Be a giver. Be accountable. See, there was one where I wasn't accountable. What should I have done instead? I should have been accountable. And that's how this gets in my ideal. Notice my impact and power and never misuse those things. So I know there was a relationship where I said I misused my power. What power? Well, if somebody loves you, you have power in their lives. Am I misusing that? Oh, man. Be consistently available, committed, honorable, and loyal in thought, word, and deed. These all came out of heartbreaking relationships. Always make the effort to keep the communication open and be a true partner. Never manipulate. Live in reality and form a relationship with God. Honor her feelings, never obligate her. Look only to God for power and a sense of aliveness. Seek God's will and power daily to be a part of a healthy relationship. Live my life in such a way that God can love her through me. Be aware of the long term and honor it. Look to see every day who she is. And that was my ideal and is my ideal. My ideal. That's how I want it to be. And it's important to There's something very sweet about looking every day to see who she is. Who is this lady I'm with today? Because she's not yesterday's lady. She's surely not the lady that I thought I knew when we first started dating. She is yesterday's lady plus yesterday's experiences that she had. And she wakes up a new lady today. And if I can look with my heart and gut to see who she is, and she knows I do that. So I just look at her for a minute, 5 seconds. Who are you today? But I know in that 5 seconds that I'm somebody different too. And I know that she and I have a relationship to work out for today. For today. A brand new day and a brand new relationship. And it helped me see something that is very important to me, and that is that I never knew the difference between a relationship and an arrangement, because I'd had so many arrangements in my life. And an arrangement is largely contractual. You do this, I'll do this. You bring the sex, I'll bring the cash. You know, in one form or another. Married, it doesn't matter. Or you don't call me on my crap, I won't call you on your crap. Or you can be a sloppy housekeeper and I'll be a sloppy earner. Or you get angry with the kids and I won't get angry. Whatever. An arrangement is one of those contracts. An arrangement is for security. I want it so I have some steady supply of whatever I'm getting out of the relationship. Approval. You approve of me no matter what, and I'll overlook whatever. In an arrangement, you can go to sound asleep. You can be unconscious in the arrangement. In an arrangement, you're looking for order. And if anybody steps out of line, you can be mad. You keep score. You want the status quo. And the dawn comes when you realize that a relationship, what we all really want, is different. A relationship is not a contractual thing. There's a covenant to it. There's a sacredness to it. An arrangement is not about security. It's about growth. Who am I to say she shouldn't go back to school and get that master's? I support that 100. If I'm in a relationship, I do. In a relationship, I have to be awake. I have to say, who are you today? I want to wake up to who you are now. And I want to wake up to the fact that I'm somebody different too. A relationship is going to have struggle in it. It's going to be a little of this. It's not going to be a lockstep thing. There's going to be some disorder in it. And it's a relationship. And it isn't about maintaining the status quo, it's about intimacy. And that story I told you about not long ago when Linda and I just held one another and sobbed for all of our sorrow and losses was about deep, deep intimacy. And so we have what seems to be a start on a relationship. And it could never have come about but for this sex inventory and my setting an ideal for future sex relations that I wanted to have. An ideal that she knows about. There's no question about it. She knows what my ideal is. In fact, there's a couple of things in that she had in hers that I wanted for me. If they're important for you, they're important for me. And so this inventory business is quite amazing. And you read all that to another person. In step 5, the idea is you're sitting there with this other person and you're reading this, and God's there too, disclosed to ourselves, to another human being, and to God, the exact nature of all ours. And you say, God is here with me. God is here too. And when that's done, they told me to go home and spend an hour by myself, making sure I'd done the first 5 steps, and I did that. And out of that inventory, out of that reading, came a very clear picture of old ideas, of what's one of my old ideas? You can't trust women. What's another one of my old ideas? Women don't stay in your life unless they absolutely have to. They won't stay just because you want them to. Another of my old ideas, you can't have money. I can't have a mentor. I can't have this. I can't have that. I can't trust God. Lots of old ideas came floating up out of that thing. And of course, character defects, envy, sloth, all of those things, the 7 deadly sins, all of that. And you look again, and it's almost like this last look. Do I really need that in my life? Am I really willing to let it go? Because in the big book at step 6 and 7, we finally notice that if I have a defect in my life that I don't approve of, and I want to have it taken out of my life, and I'm willing to let it go, all I have to do is ask, and He will take it. Michael and I were talking earlier, laughing, because there is an interesting story about how they used to grab monkeys in the jungles. There was some years ago, there was a huge bounty to be paid for live monkeys, and they would send expeditions into the jungles in Africa to bring them back for research and for zoos and all of that. Live monkeys were hard to get, because if you set a trap that caught the monkey, usually another wild animal would take it before you could get back to the trap. Or if it was not so vicious that the monkey was dead but still had some life in it, he would fight off whatever came along. And so it was very difficult to get. And then they found a way to get all the monkeys that they needed. What they did, these guys, would go into the areas where the monkeys were, and they would take heavy metal vases with long necks. And in the bottom of the vases, they would put sweet-smelling nuts. And the monkeys loved these nuts. And these were heavy metal vases. And the monkeys could stick their arms down into these vases through the necks. And then they would grab the nuts. And they couldn't get their hand back out. And there they would be, screaming and ranting and raving on the jungle floor with their nuts. And all they had to do to get free was let go of the damn things and pull their arm out of there. But they wanted those things so bad that they could not let them go. Could not. And the hunters had gone back to camp, and they'd been playing cards for 2 days, and then they come back in and they just trank the monkeys. And when they go out, they take and they got all of them, put them in a cage, and they come to, and they got all the live monkeys they need. Isn't that great? And then I'm thinking, how many times have I gone down to see my sponsor carrying this vase? I got these problems, and I got these problems, and I don't know what I'm going to do. We talk about the problems, and he gets me laughing, and I feel better, and I say, okay, thanks. I walk out with all the problems that I walked in there with because I won't let them go. And they're killing me. They're killing me. And so sometimes we don't want to let go of our character defects. We don't want to let go of lust, of all of the things we talked about earlier and more. Do you know what sloth means? Sloth isn't just being lazy. Sloth is the refusal to rise to an opportunity for growth. I don't want to let that sloth go. I don't want to do that. Sounds too risky, and I have to do it all myself. And so at about the time I was in this process at step 9, I had a wonderful opportunity. I was up in Northern California at a conference, and there was a lady talking, and she was wonderful because at step 7 it says, My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. That's the prayer, and that's the step. We have to be willing to let it go, whatever it is, and then ask God to take it. Doesn't do any good to work on these things. If we could get rid of them that way, we would have gotten rid of them a long time ago. We have to humbly ask God to remove them. That's the nature of the step, and that's what it says at step 7. Humbly ask God to remove them, to remove our shortcomings. Meaning, humbly means, to me, knowing I can't do it, knowing I have no power over this. It'll come back and bite me in the butt every time. It is not gone, it's just resting over there. And I'm up in Northern California, and I don't know quite how this 6 and 7 thing is going to work for me until I hear a gal talk up there. Her name is Joyce. She was sober 20 years at the time. And she comes from Reno, and I suppose she's still over there. Joyce had come to a point in her sobriety when she was 10 years sober that she wanted to get over her fear of heights. And she decided to take skydiving lessons to get over her fear of heights. That's not what I would have done, but Joyce decided to do this. And she took these lessons, and the day came that she's supposed to solo out of an airplane, and in the drop zone was her husband, her ex-husband, I don't know why he was there, her kids, the women she sponsored. Yeah. And that's what happened. She came over the drop zone and came out of the plane. She had packed the chute, and the chute was wrong. And when she hit the deck, she was going a hell of a lot faster than she was supposed to. And she's up there telling this story, so you kind of get that she lived through it. But you could see the asymmetry in her face, you know. And in her words, I'm sitting there, she said, I spent the next year and a half in the hospital learning how to urinate again. And you go, oh, God. And all she wanted to do was get over her fear of heights. And so her husband left her. But her ex-husband, who was in AA, came back into her life as a friend. And she's out of the critical care, and she's out of the hospital, and she's in the rehab part. And she's going through all of this stuff. And he comes over to visit her every once in a while, and they have great conversations. And one day, they have lunch together. And after lunch, he sticks around, and they talk at some length. And he finally gets around to the question he's wanted to ask for some time. He says, Joyce, why did you do that? She said, you mean, and he said, yeah. Yeah, you were sober 10 years, I was sober 10, and you suddenly are out hopping around doing skydiving. Why? She said, well, I just wanted to get over my fear of heights. And he said, he started to laugh, which annoyed her, of course. And she said, what are you laughing at? And he said, all you had to do was humbly ask. And I go, oh, Jesus Christ. Wow. Wow. But I mean, I had been jumping out of airplanes all my sobriety, doing it all myself. And there's no way for me to do it all myself. I have to humbly ask. Take this lust, take me to a place where I'm gladly willing to let go of lust, where I'm gladly willing to let go of larceny, where I'm gladly willing to let go of pride, those kinds of things. They're just because now after a fourth and fifth step, when you do that 4-column thing, you know what the price has been. There's no question about it. And you know whether you still want that in your life or not. And the answer usually is no. No, that is too expensive for me. I'd rather have peace. I'd rather laugh than prove a point. The whole point of the drill is no longer to be right, but to be comfortable. To live in this world in a way that is totally great with me and great with God and allows me to be useful. And so, one by one, these character defects are being taken out of my life. Do I miss them? No. Because something has taken their place. Something has taken their place, and that is a relationship with God. The reason that I never thought a relationship with God would be very interesting is because, number one, he's just a little bitty guy that can't do anything. Number two, he's way the hell out there someplace. And number three, I think we're talking arrangement and not relationship. But you can't have an arrangement with God. You have a relationship or nothing. It isn't about you do this, I'll do that. Oh, we would have liked at some point to have that, but we don't have that. Can't have that. And so that step 7 began to wake me up, and I had to get on the road then, because we have a list of amends, people I've hurt along the way. And it says, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Can I make amends by phone? Did you do the harm by phone? Well, no. You mean to tell me that I have to go sit with these people wherever they are? Yep, that's the charge. I got to fly to Denver? Walk if you want, but go to Denver. I'll visit my sister. What's the harm? They said, be careful about this. You need to make a list of people you've harmed. They told me do this. Go through all of your inventory for the list of people you've harmed. And go through your high school annual, and go through your college annuals, and go through that silly thing from the dental school, and go through the Marine Corps rosters that you have, and go through the Christmas list and the address list that you still have, and scan it, because there are people there that you've harmed. People that didn't show up on your resentment inventory, or your fear inventory, or your sex inventory, and there were a lot of them. And they said, once you got the list of people, then you respectfully dispose of your inventory. You can burn it, you can discard it respectfully in the trash, you can take it down to the beach and bury it, you can do whatever, take it up the mountaintop and burn it. But be respectful of it, because we have to honor our resentments, because they took us home, because they showed me the truth. They showed me what was going on with me and how I was trying to live my life in an impossible way. And so after I had the list, then I reduced it. I was told to get some 3x5 cards. And in the upper left-hand corner of the card, write the person's name.